in some ways, it seems the league has moved on a little bit without me.
Here I am with Eclipse, the one and only Charlotte Major winner, very legacied player in the NAL. Although I don't know how many people nowadays recognize that because they don't
Right?
recognize. Bro, when I was talking with Cookies and he was talking about Slash Hug, like the Slash Hug slander, I don't think people realize what kind of damage Rogue did back in the day.
No, not at all, man. That was back in the day when to even go to an event, you had to be top two.
Yeah, no, exactly. And
That
I,
was
I
hard.
think, yeah, especially back then, because, like, you always had flip side of the mix. Elevate would show up every once in a while and always just throw a wrench in the spanners. Like, it
Hmm.
was deadly back then. Even, like, I don't think was having problems, but Sisu was always, like, that top two European team. And they missed events every once in a while, too. So, like, no one was safe back then.
Oh yeah.
So, I guess we'll start with Dark Zero because I realized we're gonna get to Rogue. Don't worry about that. But I realized looking at your Liquipedia that you actually only have like two cores that you really played with throughout your entire career, which is something impressive in its own right, especially in this like day and age where you always see team like players hopping around teams all the time. You really played with the core of Rogue, and you played with the core of DZ, and like those are the only teams that you've played with, and you've found success on both of them, like good success. So with Dark Zero, I guess how did you end up there? Because Rogue ended on a sour note, but how did you end up on Dark Zero as opposed to any of the other teams at the time? Because back then, especially, it was a pretty wide open field of like teams that you would think are pretty strong or have potential and all of that good stuff. So why Dark Zero?
Um, at the time they were doing extremely well, and obviously Rogue got relegated. But Dark Tier also had shown interest in me at that invitational before we were
Oh, okay.
relegated. And so I was very close to taking an offer from them at that point, but I was a little too loyal and I wanted to see it through the road because
Oh
those are my
yeah,
boys.
yeah.
And so obviously it didn't end up well, but I kind of had already had my foot in the door a little bit with
Okay,
Dark Zero. And as soon as I knew I still wanted to keep competing, I sent them a message and they're like, yeah, we'd love to have you.
cool. I guess that brings me into my second question, which is your flexibility. Because when throughout your time on Dark Zero, I want to say you started in more of a fragging role. Like we would see you on that Ash and the Vigil on Consulate in particular. Like you always stuck
Right.
out as that roamer in my mind. But throughout your time, you kind of swapped roles and continued to find success with that. Even though, like for many players, we've seen even with like players today, role changes can still really throw them off their game. How did you kind of find success and stay on top of your game while changing roles and still doing so at such a high level?
Mm, I think I just have a bit of an open mind.
Okay.
Um, and I think a lot of the ways I look at improvement is very just fundamental based. And
Okay.
so I know it's kind of abstract, but it's just when you have to switch around a lot, then you just kind of got to go back to your basics. And so I kind of just played lots of flex roles, and over time it became easier as I played more and more stuff. Then branching out was already pretty comfortable for me.
Interesting. And so, like, what do you think for a player just starting out or wanting to improve? What do you think those fundamentals for them would be then?
Uh, Probably just your own individual positioning and map control and things like that.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what your opponents are doing and make sure they aren't able to set up and things like that.
Okay. Cool.
Really, just always playing with an objective in mind for yourself and then for your team as a whole as well.
Cool. All right. So, With that said, Dark Zero, I think, is probably the team that you found the most success with. I mean, obviously, Rogue was also like a good time, but
Right.
I think the Charlotte Major is like the crown jewel in your career thus far.
I would
And
agree.
how did that come about? Because at least for me, granted, I wasn't paying as close attention at the time, so I'm not gonna pretend like I'm completely on the pulse with this one. But at least for me, I didn't think you were one of the you were a top team, but you weren't like in the conversation to necessarily sweep everyone else to win the event. Like that was still very much a W7M Team Liquid. Oh God, who was a strong EU team back then? I don't remember, but like there's a you were up there, but you weren't necessarily number one. How did this win
Right.
come about? Did Dark Zero just peak at the right time, or was there something else?
I definitely think that it was a good time. If I remember right, I do think we were on a pretty upward trend
Okay,
all throughout then, like because we had Mexico and then I'm trying to think, and then Sweden. I think we did really bad, and then but that's when we think we restructured with Troy, and then we had a good, yeah, we had the good invitational. Sorry, yeah, I'm having to remember everything.
oh, no worries. Yeah, you had a good invitational. You finished seventh to eighth, and then that that led into the stage one of the NAL for 2022, which brought you into Charlotte.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I think we're on an upward trend already
Okay,
to help us out, and I think a lot of the big heavy hitters were also missing from the major. I think FaZe wasn't there, and I remember that being our kind of kryptonite on DZ, even throughout a couple of rosters. Remember
okay,
them? I think they eliminated us at that invitational, and I honestly
they
think we
did.
had a good chance at making it further if we drew a different opponent than FaZe
Okay,
at that event.
yeah. Do you what about Fizz was kind of like the kryptonite? Was it their aggressiveness, their like playstyle? What sticks out as like kind of that real stinger?
Yeah, I mean, I think they just were super aggressive and they were able to pick apart specifically our defenses,
Okay.
from what I can remember.
Yeah, and obviously, like, no worries if you can't remember exactly because it was
Yeah,
a long time
yeah.
ago. So with Charlotte, I want to talk about the meta because like the meta was well, it was the LMG meta, so it was really wacky, to say the least.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, Pambazoo was popping off, Pamba Party Time, and all that. But
Hmm.
the whole team was finding success, and that brought you into the finals against Astralis. How was that finals? Because this isn't your first one. You've won events before. You've been on this stage plenty of times. Like, what was it like being up against Astralis, another North American team in a North American arena with a North American crowd? Like, what was that like? Because that's not common, right?
Hmm. I think it was kind of like you said, how we weren't the favorites
Yeah.
necessarily from the beginning of that event, but I do think we were the favorites to win that specific match, which I think was a good place to be. But yeah, I mean, it was great.
Yeah. I do have a question about like the team after Charlotte because winning Charlotte was a great accomplishment. I was high on the Dark Zero stocks. I was like Dark Zero all the way. We're doing it, baby. This is our time.
Right.
And then Dark Zero kind of struggled through the rest of the year and didn't manage to make for the other two majors.
Right.
What do you what happened there? Why was there a failure to kind of convert off of Charlotte, do you think? Like obviously,
Um, I don't know anything specific that I can really put my finger on. I remember that we finished both seasons. We were a game away from making both majors.
yeah.
I think we finished fifth in both.
Yep.
Into that season immediately after Charlotte kind of just is what it is. But then the season after that, I think we had it was a little more complicated, just because of a hyper becoming really burned out
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
just
that.
a week into the season, and it kind of really threw us for a loop. And then we were having a sub. I think it brought a lot of frustrations to the team, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, Personally, I felt like I was trying to make the best of it, but practice was kind of unproductive at the time, and a lot of times it felt like we were not practicing for nothing, but it kind of became where at the beginning of the season our mindset was, okay, whatever, let's just get through the season, do our best. But then playing with guys, we ended up doing very well, and so we had our expectations high, and then kind of falling short again and getting that fifth place finish, I think stung extra because we were so close.
Okay. Um, Rewinding a bit. I know I'm like jumping all over the place. I apologize,
Oh, no
but
worries.
I was interested on the Canadian pickup because he is almost talismanic in like the way that success follows him. You trace all the major international victories that North America has, and you find Canadian stamps somewhere along there, like Continuum, like SSG, and like in Charlotte with Dark Zero. Like, what was the thought process behind picking up this player and like this captain uh, when you did? Because I believe that was right after USN 2019. Not 2019, probably 2020, I believe.
Of when we picked up Canadian,
Yeah.
we picked them up after the Mexico major,
Oh wait, you're right.
so that should
Yes.
be a little while after that.
Okay, yeah, no, I was. Oh wait, I know what I was getting confused with. I think I don't remember what it was, but I was looking at a USM. I got mixed up.
All good. But I mean, I think he had taken his break from SSG
Yeah.
a season or two prior to that, and then I think he was just interested in starting with a new system. But I think his strength is motivating a group of individuals and keeps everybody looking to improve and helps to kind of direct practice and is kind of one of those natural leader types, and so can is kind of a figurehead for the team, which is nice to have.
Do you think it's essential for a team to have that kind of inspiring leader type figure, or do you think it's not necessary but helpful? Because I kind of bounce between thinking it's necessary and thinking it's a nice
Mm,
bonus.
I think maybe it can depend on the team.
Mm.
Uh, I think maybe being on Darkseer, I think one of our problems was even like before Troy was kind of struggling with our identity as a team, and I think Troy kind of singularly brings that
Okay.
of it just being a Canadian team almost. I
Okay.
don't know if that makes sense,
No, it
but
does because he is one of those players
but
like
but
with
yeah,
that personality, so
I
that
think
that
he
follows.
can kind of bring identity to a team. I think that helps Dark Zero.
Okay. So rewinding a bit even more now, talking about Rogue, because and no, not the European one that's called Koi now. No, we're talking about the
Right.
OG Rogue. We're talking about we're talking about DreamHack Valencia champions, USN 2018 champions.
Spin back the clock.
Yeah, the domestic rival to Evil Geniuses. Uh, let's start there because that's always an interesting one. Rogue was kind of the domestic rival to Evil Geniuses, and when we talk about this older era of Siege, I feel like a lot of people kind of get a little flippant about it, which obviously we've addressed a little bit already, but I did want to talk about what it was like being that rival with EG in NA, because obviously they're viewed as one of the historically great teams in the world, but you were right there with them, lockstep, at least domestically. Like, what was it like playing against this team?
Uh, I mean, obviously they were solid. Just lots of individual skill on both sides. I think it was a little frustrating that we did come out on the back foot a lot of the time. I don't know if there's anything like too specific to say, but there were a couple times when we definitely could have had them.
Okay.
But it definitely goes all the way back to the first invitational where we faced off against them in the finals.
Yeah,
And
I
I think
was gonna ask about that.
specifically in that one, I think we won consulate. I think it was the first map.
Yes, I want to
And
say it was
then
like a 5-2 or something. It was a pretty strong win for you guys.
yeah, our map pool at the time was pretty terrible. We only had 3 good maps, and we were able to play our good maps against the international teams because they didn't know. But then whenever we played EG, they just banned our only good maps. And
Oh
so
no.
so we had 3 good maps, and then we had 3 kind of middle maps, and then 3 maps we just didn't even play, just so we had to perma ban it.
Yeah.
And so I think they were able to play the map ban phase way easier.
Okay. So,
Be-
oh, yeah, you go, you go.
so we won that consulate, and I think we kind of came into the finals being like, well, we'll do our best. But then as soon as we won that, we're like, oh yeah, we can win this. And then we kind of let it skyscraper slip a little bit.
Yeah,
But it is
and
what it
that
is.
skyscraper especially was like a really close match. I think it went max OT final round.
Yeah.
So it was not an easy victory for them in the slightest, and you guys went down swinging by all accounts. Um, taking this to slightly happier times, winning USN and DreamHack Valencia. Obviously, these are two different teams, similar cores, because this is still Rogue we're talking about, but one or
Right.
two of the names is going to be a little bit different. I believe
Um,
USN is.
I I think it might have been the same roster. I think.
Oh, was it? Wait.
Uh, Shuttlevert easily slash myself.
Yeah, I know that was one for. So it was U slash easily shuttle vert for USN, and then it was yeah same team actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I think USN was first, and I didn't know this at the time. I was under the assumption earlier that that almost every USN was kind of like a let's go and party type event. But after talking to Cookies about the first one, that was when people were actually taking it serious, and that was the USN that you guys won, USN 2018 over Evil Geniuses, in another barn burner of a match, I might add.
Yeah.
Going into this tournament and like this series, what was the mentality and like what was the approach? Because this is a very different time in the game, and very different meta and all that stuff too, right?
Honestly, I'm not really that sure. I think I do remember that EG was playing with a sub. I think that was during the era of Geo's infamous
Oh
visa issues.
yeah, it was gotcha.
And so, yeah, so I think we were really only worried about that SSG match because that was at the time when they were kind of starting to heat up.
Yeah, because that's, geez, yeah, no, that is a nasty SSG actually. Looking at it. So pretty
And then,
much once you guys cleared SSG in the semis, you were confident in just being able to take the whole thing.
hmm yeah, just went against a team with their sub. I kind of cheapened the win against EG at the time, I guess, a little bit, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, we didn't have our full roster,"
Yeah,
which I mean is a valid complaint.
yeah,
But yeah, so I got the trophy.
yeah. I mean, hey, not every tournament can say that. So that's a win in itself. And then moving on to DreamHack Valencia, this I remember this as kind of like the oh shit, Rogue are finally there moment,
hmm
because up in like obviously the USN win was a big one. That was domestic, and like there were subs involved, and it was cool, but it wasn't enough. When DreamHack Valencia hit, I was fully on the okay, we're doing this. Rogue has decided to take over because not only did you guys win, it was in very dominant fashion against everyone. Like you 2-0'd your groups, you dropped a single map to Navi, you 2-1'd Reciprocity, who those guys were always fucking scary. You 2-0'd Chaos, and then you 2-0'd LFO, which was Rise, Aces, Corey, Alfama, and Hicks,
That's right.
which
Yeah.
was also a very strong team at the time. So it's not like
Yeah. Yeah.
they were a cakewalk, especially considering they made it to the finals over FaZe Clan and Penta, which granted, we're not talking Dynasty Penta, but it's still like a solid team to have to beat to make it into the semis and then the grand finals.
Mhm.
Like, what was this? What was this tournament for you, and like, what did it mean for you guys?
Um, I think at the time the biggest thing what it meant was it was a we were trying to qualify for Raleigh Major, I believe. I'm not sure, but I remember we qualified for one of the majors from winning
Yeah.
that event. But I think on all the teams I've been on, we've always preferred international play, just because it really feels like you can express yourself as a team.
Okay.
Whereas once you play against your regional matchups, a lot of the times it feels like the competition is different because you just get so familiar with how each other plays, and you can only do so many strats in Rainbow before people just start forgetting, and it's just not as productive.
Yeah.
You're generally going to be running similar or the same strats.
Yeah. So it kind of domestically, it's almost like mind games more of an actual like just being able to play the match. Whereas
Right.
internationally, you just get to say, all right, we're going in, we know our play style, and let's just sock them real good. Whereas,
Exactly.
okay,
I feel like during that event, the reciprocity match is probably one of the closer ones. I don't remember the exact score, but I remember a couple overtimes in there somewhere.
yeah, you had two overtimes on both the maps you won, Cafe and Coastline. One of them being Max OT, and like that was the closest match you guys had. Like you won. The other match that you lost a map in was against Navi, but that was the opening match. Even
Hmm.
had you lost that, which you 7-3'd them on map 3, so not like that was a likely outcome. But even if you lost, you were still in the group. You were still in the tournament. So yeah, the domestic opponent really was the closest match for you guys in this tournament.
I feel like that was a pretty common theme throughout a lot of the matches I ended up playing,
Yeah.
where our domestic matchups tended to be close, especially online. And then a lot of times we'd make these events, but kind of by the skin of our teeth, and then end up having some pretty good runs once we got into the international play.
Yeah. Like even just looking at some of your rogue results, you guys were always almost always getting knocked out by like an EG Penta, or I guess the Cloud9 like Reciprocity or TSM teams. So it was straight
Right.
up like the number one hang up for your team was actually North American teams. You guys
Yeah, I would
or the best
agree.
team in the world, like, which also no shame in that one. Like you
That was
can't.
interesting because that was the only time I ever played against that Prime Penta, and we both had a sub.
Oh yeah, no, because that was Atlantic City, so that was Kanto with
Hmm.
Kanto subbing in.
And then we were subbing Shuttle at the time.
Oh yeah, wow, that's crazy. That's a crazy piece of lore right there.
Oh yeah,
What was the
both of which ended up on each team. Like we
yeah?
ended up picking Shuttle later on, and
What
ended up picking up Kanto.
yeah? What was it like playing against that Prime Penta? Because we talk about them in these mythical terms, but actually getting time in the server against them wasn't an easy feat. Especially taking a map off them was also not easy. So, like, what was it like?
I remember it was a little frustrating because we were so close. I think Skyscraper we played them on, and there were a couple kind of moments where they're like discipline. It's like over peaking would kind of get to us. And I think we
Okay.
lost a couple rounds because of that. And then I do think it kind of goes back to our stuff domestically that was getting harder because we'd be good at stuff, and then teams would be ready for it. And so we had a strat where you take the OG busted lion
Oh, yeah,
and then
yeah,
go
yeah.
go for those archive plants on the top floor bomb site.
Yeah.
And so it was my job. I would sit there down their lion, have a little drone spot, mark them if they're trying to C4 the plant, and then just like wall bang them. But that was a strat that worked super well for us for a long time. And then domestically, it got predictable and it was hard to use. But then we pulled out against Penta at the time, and it worked out great for us.
That's really interesting. Especially because, like, that kind of anecdote kind of gets lost in the weeds a lot of the time with this stuff. Because it's like, oh, well, they placed here, they placed there. And it's like, sometimes those, like, little strats gets lost in the weeds of, like, well, the narrative, well, the play style, well, this, well, that. And it's like, it's always cool to hear, like, yeah, we've had this
Yeah.
strat for months. We just waited until this one moment, and that's when we used it, and that's why it worked so well.
Right. I mean, maybe it speaks to not being as adaptable enough or the teams being more adaptable, which I think is fair to say, but it's definitely just noteworthy, I guess.
Yeah. So, I coming towards the end of this interview because we're at the like 25-minute mark. Since your time on DZ, there's been a couple opportunities to play, like even just for big events like a Six Invitational or the major qualifications. But you haven't been on a pug stack or a proper team to even shoot for these events. Is there a particular reason why, or are you just waiting for off season to begin to try and find another opportunity in the NAL? Like, what's going on
Uh,
there?
I mean, it's hard to say because I mean, I'm not definitely not interested, but in some ways, it seems the league has moved on a little bit without me, which I
Okay.
think is okay because originally I was going to be on Beast Coast with Slash, so we'd be reuniting Slash, Xeno, um, Surf, and then we were trying out Fish, and I think he had a good shot at making it, and then myself.
Okay.
And honestly, I was actually pretty reinvigorated with a lot of things, and
Yeah.
is really optimistic. And scrims were honestly pretty good, and were some of the most productive I've ever played. Like every round, somebody had something that we could try, and or the team synergy was pretty good. I don't think we were like dominant in scrims, but we'd be able to take a map off some of the good teams in our 6-6 scrims.
Yeah. And also, that's like a team that clearly, at least on paper, sounds like it has some potential, right?
Mm-hmm. But then what Beast Coast actually ended up telling us was they told us they were pulling out of the league entirely.
Oh.
And so we were like, oh, okay. Which ended up being not true, I guess. I'm sure they have their reasons for things, but it felt a little dishonest, but it's not a big deal anyway.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where that leaves me now necessarily. I'm still open to tryouts, but I haven't really got any. And that's also a lot to my own doing. I have not been putting my time in. I've mostly just been kind of hanging out. Like Slash and I actually were playing Counter Strike, Counter Strike leagues just for fun.
Oh, okay. Are you in like ESEA or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
So
my god.
we're in ESEA Intermediate right now, just chilling,
That's crazy.
which is
Imagine
fun.
you're
Can I?
just some CS player, you casually watch R6 back in the day. All of a sudden you're up against Slash and Eclipse, You're just like, ah, no, not like this.
There's some real CS gamers out there. I mean, I played CS before Rainbow, not competitively or anything, but that's where I get my start in competitive FPSs.
Oh, okay. Are you hyped for CS2 then?
Oh yeah, I'm super excited.
All right. So, I think that just about finishes all of my questions. But for you, Eclipse, one of the most long-standing players in the history of the game, is there anything you want to say to players, teams, fans, anyone?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I would definitely say thank you to everyone who has supported me thus far, and I guess to other teams. I'm still interested in competing, but I feel like I'd have to get the right offer to get me back in it. You know what I mean? Like I was really
Yeah.
interested in that Beast Coast offer. I was really excited to keep going, but then as soon as that kind of fell out, and I was like, yeah, man, this is lame.